Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? Am I loud and clear?
Yes, you are.
Good evening and welcome to our class. We are still looking at governance. We are still handling issues concerning governance. Today we are going to look at something new, what we call, a moment, I share the notes, we proceed. Today we shall look at theories of corporate governance. This is what we are going to handle this evening. The theories of corporate governance. We shall discuss at least 4 theories: agency theory, stewardship theory, stakeholders theory, and lastly, sociology theory. These are concepts that shape the field of corporate governance. Generally, we define a theory as a set of principles on which the practice of an activity is based. That is one of the simple definitions of theory. Theories. This is a set of principles on which the practice of an activity is based. We are looking at the principles that shape a particular discipline, a particular field. So the concept of governance, what shapes the concept of governance? We also define this as an idea used to account for a situation or justify a course of action. We can say a theory is an idea that justifies a course of action. That's a theory. So we are looking at the concept of corporate governance. This concept of corporate governance, how can we justify the importance of corporate governance? That's what we call a theory. Also, another very good definition, we can say a theory, this is a system of ideas intended to explain something. A system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. A supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something. For our case, we are trying to explain the concept of corporate governance. What is corporate governance? What is the concept? What is the importance of corporate governance? Now we discuss several theories, and we use several theories to try and explain and understand what is corporate governance. So that's what we call a theory. That's the meaning of a theory. And we are going to look at the first one, what we call agency theory. The first one is agency theory. This theory is associated with Adam Smith. This theory was invented by Adam Smith, who identified an agency problem. Adam Smith identified an agency problem in the joint stock companies. And Adam Smith is a scholar who discovered that there was an agency problem encountered by companies listed at the stock exchange. Remember what agency theory is? Agency theory this is used to explain and resolve issues in the relationship between business principals and their agents. That's agency theory. Agency theory, this is a theory that tries to explain the relationship between the principal and the agent. How should the principal and the agent relate with each other? In our case, we are looking at corporate governance. And remember how we were classifying the various stakeholders interested in corporate governance. Remember we said we have, number one, the owners of the business. The owners of the business, the shareholders of a company. This is the principal. The people who own the company are the principal. So now, how should the owner of the company relate with the employees? Remember when we were doing our introduction last week, we said the employees are employed by the owners of the company, so that now they can take care of the interest of the shareholders. Now the employees, the management and the employees, these are now the agents. These are the people who are working, representing the company. Agents. How should the agent behave towards the principal? What kind of relationship should the two have? So Adam Smith discovered there was a problem in companies that were publicly listed at the stock exchange, such that the principal was losing, meaning the principal was not getting value for their investment money because the agents were not performing their duties and responsibilities of protecting the assets of the shareholders and increasing the wealth of the shareholders. That's what we call the agency theory. Adam Smith discovered there was managerial negligence. There was managerial negligence on the part of the agents. The agents were being negligent, managerial negligence, people not performing their duties, such that the shareholders were losing their money, losing their investments. They were not getting value for the capital they have invested in businesses. The fundamental theoretical basis of corporate governance is agency costs. Our concern here is agency costs. Shareholders are the owners of any company, and they are the principals of the company. By virtue of their ownership, the principals, the shareholders of a company, define the objectives of a company. That is the role of the principal, the owners of the company. The management, directly or indirectly, selected by shareholders to pursue the objectives set by the principals. We have said the principal will come up with objectives of his company, and then he will appoint, directly or indirectly, the management. And the purpose of the management is to pursue the objectives of the company as set by the owners of the company. Where the principals generally assume that the agents would invariably carry out their objectives, it is often not so. That is a basic assumption. The principals generally assume that agents will automatically take care of their interests. And the interest here is to pursue the company's objectives. Company's objectives can be to increase profits, to increase the market share, to reduce costs, growth, opening up of new branches, research and development. Those are our principals' objectives, the owners of the company. Then they appoint the management to implement the objectives. But now we are told, unfortunately, this does not happen automatically. The management will not automatically take care of the shareholders' interests. For instance, here we have an example where sometimes the management practices what we call managerial negligence. For instance, the CEO of a company may want to increase his managerial empire and personal status by using the company's funds to finance an unrelated diversification, which could reduce long-term shareholder value. This is a very good example of managerial negligence. Here we have a CEO of a company misusing his position, misusing company's funds for his own personal gain against the long-term interest of the shareholder. And now, this is what we call the agency problem. The agency problem arises when the objectives of the management conflicts with the objectives of the shareholders. When the management's objectives are contrary to the interest of the shareholders. Now we have a problem we call agency problem. The agency problem. The shareholders and other stakeholders of the company may not be able to counteract this managerial negligence by the CEO, mainly because of inadequate disclosure about such a decision. Now, because of managerial negligence, the CEO will hide their actions. And such a thing causes what we call now the agency problem. The cost inflicted by such dissonance is the agency cost. The cost inflicted by such dissonance is the agency cost. This is now what we call the agency cost. The fundamental theoretical basis of corporate governance is agency cost. That's what we call agency theory. The theory that tries to explain the cost of the agent to the principal. How much money is the principal spending to maintain the agent? How much money is the agent costing the shareholders? Remember, on one hand, we have the owners of the company, the shareholders, who wants to increase their profits. They want to get more dividends from the shares they own in a company. And on the other hand, we have the employees, the management, whose main interest is to increase their salaries and benefits. That's what we call the agency theory, the agency cost. This shows us the relationship between the two. The core purpose of corporate governance is to design and put in place disclosures, monitoring, oversight, and corrective systems that can align the objectives of the two sets of players as closely as possible, and hence minimize agency costs. Remember, here we have two opposing parties. Here we have a situation where we have two opposing sides, the shareholders and the management. Each have their own different objectives. The shareholders want the profits of the company to increase. The shareholders want to get more dividends from the shares they own in companies. So the shareholders want to cut the cost so that they can add value to their investment. But on the other side, we have people who want salary increase, bonuses. So now, agency theory helps the field of corporate governance to come up with appropriate policies. Remember how we defined corporate governance? A system. This is a system in a company involving policies, rules, and procedures to promote and increase the value of the shareholders' wealth through now disclosures of financial statements, practices in the organization, monitoring and evaluation. We do monitoring and evaluation. These are systems developed by the owners of the company, the principal. The principal will come up with the policies and the procedures to monitor the activities of the management, disclosures, oversights, and collective measures, as well as collective measures. Disclosures, monitoring, oversight, and collective systems for the purpose of making sure the management is implementing the objectives in line with the principles, objectives, and wishes. That's what we call agency theory. It shows us how these two people can work together. How can these two people work together? How can the principal and the agent work together? How can the shareholders and the management and the employee work together for the benefit of everybody? In agency theory, the shareholders of a company are the principals, and the managers are the agents. And there is an agency loss, which is the extent to which returns to the residual claimants, the owners, fall below, and what they would be if the principals, the owners themselves, exercised direct control of the corporation. Here we are looking at the cost of the agents, the cost of the principals using the agents to run the company, compared to the situation where the principal was running the company. That's what we call the agency loss. The agency theory specifies mechanisms which reduces agency loss. Agency theory comes up with various mechanisms which reduces agency loss. This include incentive schemes for managers, which reward them financially for maximizing shareholders' interests. You want the managers, the directors, you want the CEOs to maximize the shareholders' interest. So you give them an incentive scheme. For every 1 million, you get this percentage. For every 100 million sales, you get this percentage. For every 1 billion shares profit, you get a percentage of that. That is an incentive scheme to try and reduce agency loss. We call this the agency loss, the cost of managerial negligence. This also includes a situation where the senior executives will get shares at a reduced price. The senior executives obtain shares at a reduced price, thus aligning financial interests of executives with those of shareholders. This is a very common trend. Remember, as a principal, you want the management to serve you fully. You want the employees to serve you 100% free. You want loyal employees. You want loyal executives. The CEO, the directors, the managers. The trick of doing that is making sure that they also buy shares of the company. They also invest in the company. The assumption here is that once the CEO buys shares in the company, he will be motivated to work to increase the wealth of the company. The more the profit he brings in, the more money he will get as dividends. This is a very common trend of reducing agency loss. And when you go at Nairobi Stock Exchange, you'll find that most top directors, most senior directors and committee members, board members of companies at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, most of them also own shares. They own large amounts of shares in the same companies. That is another way agency theory teaches us to promote the good relationship between the principal and the agent. And the purpose of agency theory is to encourage long-term value maximization of the organization's assets. Long-term value maximization of the organization against short-run executive actions which will harm the company. Here we have two main interests. The long-term interest of the company, this is the interest of the shareholders, versus the short-term interest of the executives, the employees. And their interest now is short-term. They want to increase their salaries at the expense of the long-term viability of the organization. That's agency theory. Let us look at the two mechanisms that we are still on agency theory. Let us look at the two mechanisms that make agency theory very appropriate for promoting corporate governance and for promoting a good relationship between the shareholders and the management, the executive. Number one, we have what we call fair and accurate financial disclosures. Fair, accurate financial disclosures. Yeah. As long as there is transparency in preparation of companies' books of accounts, this is one tool that can be used to monitor the activities of the management and executives. The money coming in and the money going out. As long as we are able to monitor this, then we shall have shareholders' value and interest increasing. The shareholders' value will increase. They will get more dividends for their shares. And number two, we have efficient and independent board of directors. Efficient and independent board of directors. This is one other trick that agency theory uses to ensure that the principal-agent relationship will work for the benefit of all parties and not just one party. This is where we pick directors who are independent when it comes to decision making. These are people who will advise you based on facts and evidence for the benefit of the long-term interest of the organization. Against now, corruption, managerial negligence. Such directors ensure that everything taking place in the company is according to legal and ethical means. Everything taking place in the company is necessary by legal and ethical means. So those are the two areas that agency theory promotes the relationship between the principal and the agent. But we have a problem with this theory. We have a problem with agency theory. Total control of management. Sometimes this is very hard. The total control of the management. It is very hard to totally control the executives. That's one drawback of this theory. It is very, very hard for the shareholders, even if we come up with systems, policies, procedures, rules, regulations, it is still very hard to control the behavior of the management. Sometimes they still find a way of coming up with managerial negligence and malpractices, corruption, unethical behavior that will affect the long-term interest of the shareholders. So that's one major setback of this theory. Anyone with a question before we go to the second theory? Anyone with a question before we go to the second theory? Esther Waithera, can you hear me? And the others hear me? Esther Waithera, refresh your page. Esther, refresh your page. Might have a problem on your side. I can see the others are saying I'm okay. Yeah. Everybody says my sound is okay. So now let us go to the second theory. Let us go to the second theory. The second theory that tries to explain corporate governance, the concept of corporate governance. We say the corporate governance is the collection of mechanisms, processes, and relations used by various parties to control and to operate an organization for the purpose of increasing shareholders' wealth and protecting their interests. So stewardship theory, this is a bit different from the first one. This is a theory that says that managers left on their own will act as responsible stewards of the assets they control. This is stewardship theory. This theory tells us that once you give people the responsibility to be our company's executives, they will naturally be committed to care for the interest of the company. That is stewardship theory. This theory assumes that given a choice between self-serving behavior and pro-organizational behavior, the manager will place higher value on cooperation than defection. Under normal circumstances, this theory says, under normal circumstances, the CEO, the directors, the managers, when you give them the responsibility to manage an organization, they will willingly choose to serve the interest of the corporation and not their own self-interests. That's what we call stewardship theory. The theory assumes that managers are basically trustworthy. Managers are basically trustworthy and they will attach significant value to their own personal reputation. Managers are basically trustworthy and they will attach significant value to their own personal reputation. So they will do everything in their power to protect the interest of the company. The market for managers with a strong personal reputation serves as the primary mechanism to control behavior, with more reputable managers being offered higher compensation packages. Now you can see now the reasoning. Here we make the assumption that managers care about their personal reputation and their name. Managers want to be associated with performance. Managers want to be associated with performance. We assume that managers will automatically work and do everything in their power to serve the organization and not their own personal interest for the purposes of their reputation. You know, if you do good, your name will be mentioned by everybody. Everybody will be talking about you. This CEO, that CEO has transformed the company, has changed the company. So everybody will be looking for you. You become a hot cake. Everybody will be offering you higher packages, higher salaries, because they know you always perform automatically. You always protect shareholders' interests. That's stewardship theory. That's why you see in Kenya, those top executives, the people who have performed, you find them moving from one organization to another, even after their retirement. A good case in point, Safaricom. The former CEO of Safaricom, Michael Joseph, when he retired from Safaricom, next, the president appointed him to be in charge of Kenya Airways. Because of his track record at the Safaricom. Because of his track record at the Safaricom, the president offered him a job at Kenya Airways. If Michael Joseph can transform Safaricom, he can also transform Kenya Airways. Reputation. This theory says that managers will automatically work hand to protect the interest of the shareholders because of their reputation. They care about that. Also, you saw Madam Mugenda, the former VC, Kenyatta University. After she retired, the president gave her a job, a government job. If she can transform Kenyatta University, she can also transform a government ministry, a government organization. That is stewardship theory. The theory assumes that managers are basically trustworthy and managers will attach significant value to their own personal reputation. The market for managers with a strong personal reputation serves as the primary mechanism to control behavior, with more reputable managers being offered higher compensation packages. That's what we call stewardship theory. Stewardship theory is a theory that managers left on their own will act as responsible stewards of the assets they control. Stewardship theory assumes that given a choice between self-serving behavior and pro-organization behavior, a steward will place higher value on cooperation than defection. Stewardship theory. Are we together, Anthony? I've repeated that. Anthony, are we together? Even in the year 2017, our president, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, he offered a ministerial position to Equity CEO, James Mwangi. He saw what James Mwangi had done at Equity Bank. So he was offering him a job in the government. He wanted him to come and transform the government sector. That is stewardship theory. Managers will automatically take the initiative to protect their company's interest. And you can see this theory must be the favorite of shareholders. Shareholders and owners of a business, they want to work with such managers. They want to work with the people who will protect their assets and add value to their investments. If you are the shareholder of a company and you appoint such people to lead such companies, you are confident you will get the value for your investment. Financial reporting, disclosure, and auditing are important mechanisms. But when it comes to stewardship theory, we use financial reporting, disclosure, and auditing just to confirm managers' trustworthiness. We use this to confirm that our managers are trustworthy. But now, in the other theory, principal and agent theory, agency theory, we use financial reporting, disclosure, and auditing to monitor if our managers are misbehaving. You can see the differences between the two theories. In engineer, we use this to monitor, to check if people are misbehaving. But when it comes to stewardship theory, we use these three concepts to confirm that our managers are trustworthy. We have a question. James Waseka.
Okay, my question is, you've said
Yes.
you use the financial to confirm, and
Yes.
what will happen in case when you are confirming, you get that the trustworthiness is not there? Will it move back to the other theory or?
Okay. Hiyo tutaangalia. That is what we call now. Remember, everything has an advantage and a disadvantage. Yeah?
Okay.
Hiyo tutaangalia kwa disadvantages of this theory. Yeah? Yes. We shall look at this. What? Some of the drawbacks of this theory. Now, let us look at the differences between the two. The differences between agency theory and stewardship theory. Let us look at some of the differences before we look at the drawbacks of agency theory. Number one, let us look at approach. For agency theory, the executives will have what we call materialistic approach. Agency theory. The agents, the employees, are only concerned about their material gains, materialistic. Now, for stewardship theory, the approach is psychological or sociological. The well-being of the company, sacrifice for the company. That is psychological. We are leaders and we are here to serve the interest of the company, not our own. The other one we can look at is behavior. For agency theory, the behavior of the management is individualistic, opportunistic, self-serving. You can see that. Agent versus principal. I am self-serving. I'm here to serve my own personal interest. I am an opportunistic. I see an opportunity, I take advantage of it for my own profit, not the profit of the company. Individual. My concern is myself, not the company, not us, individual. While stewardship is trustworthy, collectivistic, and pro-organizational. Trustworthy, collective, it is us, not I. It is us, not me. Then pro-organizational. The concern is the company. Any decision you make, you first of all look at what will be the benefit to the company. How will my company benefit from my actions? Pro-organizational, not I. You see opportunities, you don't exploit them. Your concern is the benefit of the organization, not you as an individual. For agency theory, managers are motivated by their own objectives. But for stewardship theory, managers are motivated by the principles, objectives. You want the attention of the shareholders. You want to have a good name in the eyes of the shareholders. What you care about is your reputation in the eyes of the shareholders, not your own personal. For agency, the interest of the managers and principals differ. Managers and principals' interest differ. There's a conflict. Managers wanataka mambo yao, principals wanataka mambo yao. Conflict of objectives. But for stewardship theory, these people work together as partners. Managers and principals work together as partners. There's no conflict. They all work on each other's side for the benefit of the organization. For management, another major difference. For agency theory, the role of the management is to monitor and control. Monitor and control. This is a class prefect. This is a dictator, a general. But now for stewardship theory, the purpose of the management is to facilitate and empower. The manager is there to empower the others and to facilitate the others to accomplish their tasks. Stewardship ni kujitolea, self-sacrifice for the benefit of the group. The purpose here is not I. The purpose is we. We all win. We all gain, not I. And another very key difference, for agency theory, the principal and manager relationship is based on control. The principal is there to control the agent, 24/7. You want to know everything the agent is doing as a principal. But now for stewardship, the principal trusts the manager. The principal has total confidence and trust in the manager. No matter what, you know Michael Joseph will always perform. You don't need to monitor him. You don't need to control him. He'll always give you profits in billions every year. Last year I saw 75 billion. Just imagine. Trust. James Mwangi wa Equity, Mandamu Mugenda, trust. That is trust. That is not control. That is trust. Let us look at some of the drawbacks of this. Yeah, number one ni ile tu tulisema, our brother James alisema, sometimes you give people trust, they abuse the trust. That is the number one major drawback of this theory. Sometimes if we don't come up with the control mechanisms, if we give our agents total trust, we assume that they will naturally do what is right. Sometimes it will not work. It will not work. Sana sana hapa Africa. That is one major drawback of this theory. And number two, the cost. Number two is the cost. The shareholder will spend a lot of money motivating the executives. Once you see someone bringing in a profit of 75 billion, they don't get something from that. They don't get a percentage of that. The salary will increase, benefits, bonuses. They don't get very high peaks, incentives. It is very, very costly to maintain executives under this arrangement. That is another drawback of this theory. Any question as we go to the next one? Anybody with a theory? Anybody with a question? Before we go to the next theory. Today we are very quiet. Oh, we are okay. Oh, we are good. Yeah? We are okay. Yeah? Let us go to the other theory. Everything is clear. Let us look at the stakeholder theory. Stakeholders theory. This is a theory. Stakeholder theory is a theory that accounts for multiple constituencies impacted by business entities like employees, suppliers, local communities, creditors. This shows the interconnected relationships between a business and the other interested persons, such as customers, suppliers, employees, investors, communities. What is the relationship between our company and our customers, our suppliers, our employees, the society around us? That's what we call stakeholder theory. The concept here is, if the company creates value for the stakeholders, then the stakeholders will take care of the shareholders' interest. Stakeholders theory. Now, we are advised, apart from concentrating on maximizing shareholders' wealth, the shareholders should also take the initiative to take care of all other stakeholders' interests. It is a give and take. Give us what we want, we give you what you want. Stakeholders theory. In essence, the theory considers the organization as an input-output model. In essence, the theory considers the organization as an input-output model by explicitly adding all interest groups, employees, customers, dealers, government, society at large to the corporate mix. So here we are arguing, if the shareholders want us to increase their wealth, let them also take care of our interests. For shareholders to get value for their money, they should first take care of the interest of the various partners involved and engaged in a company. Take care of your customer, take care of employees, suppliers, communities, and once you do that, then they will also take care of your own interest. Now, this theory has a few problems. We have a few problems of this theory. And the first problem is, who really is a genuine stakeholder? Who should the company take care of? Who should we take care of? Should we take care of customers' interest? Even the community, we also even looking at the community. Should we be concerned with the community around us? Do we deserve to call our community as and define them as part of our organization? That is one major problem with this theory. And also another criticism of this theory, it is mainly not applicable by corporations. Sometimes it is not applicable. It is not possible to take care of everybody's interest. Applicability of this is not possible. In theory, it is very good on theory. But now when it comes to the implementation of this, taking care of all those stakeholders, and you also are not aware of who is a stakeholder and who is not a stakeholder, that becomes a major challenge for us. Because we have a range and a diversity of stakeholders, and also, this theory opens up a path to corruption and chaos. This theory is going to cause corruption and chaos. Scratch my back, I scratch your back. As the management, as the executive, you will have the attitude. Ukitaka nikufanyia kazi na wewe pia unishughulikie. This theory opens up room for corruption and chaos. Haki yetu, haki yetu, mnasikiaga hiyo maneno? Haki yetu. Now, instead of being a steward, instead of serving the company, you adopt the concept of scratch my back, I scratch your back. No pay, no work. No bonus, no work. This will create corruption and chaos, confusion, and conflict between the principal and the agent. Now this is the shareholder and the management and employees. We call that stakeholder theory. Any question as we go to the last one? Anyone with a question as we go to the last one? Lastly, we are going to look at sociological theory of corporate governance. This focuses mostly on bond compensation and the implications for power and wealth distribution in the society. Sociological theory looks at the composition of the bond and the implications for power and wealth distribution in the society. What is the implications for power and wealth distribution in our society? Here we look at meaning at bond composition. We want to avoid concentrating power in the hands of a privileged class, a few. Power is in the hands of a few, privileged class, which will cause major challenges to equity and social progress. This is what will cause major challenges to equity and social progress. Under this theory, bond compensation, financial reporting, and disclosure, auditing are necessary mechanisms to promote equity and fairness in the society. The problem of directors interlocking, this is where multiple directorships in various organizations. Here we are looking at one person being the director of more than one company, multiple directorships in various organizations. The problem of director interlocking. Here we say the purpose of this theory, to ensure good corporate governance, we should not concentrate the power and directorship in the hands of a privileged class, a few. Yes, we acknowledge Michael Joseph is very good at what he does, but there is no point of having Michael Joseph as the CEO of 10 government parastatals. Power, executive power should not be concentrated on a few privileged class. This is like one man, one vote. One man as one director of one company, period. That is sociological theory. If we do this will become a major challenge to social equity and economic progress of the society. We are told, apart from a company making money, a company should also promote socio-economic prosperity of the society. Organizations should also promote fairness in the society. That's what we call sociological theory. Sociological theory of corporate governance. Any question? We are done with that chapter. Anyone with a question? We were looking at the theories of corporate governance. Anyone with a question? We have looked at the four major ones. Agency theory, stewardship theory, stakeholder theory, and sociological theory. Anyone with a question? No questions, we are okay. We can call it a day. Next week, we shall look at governance framework and structures in Kenya. Corporate governance framework in Kenya. The corporate governance framework and structures, and our concern will be Kenya. Corporate governance, this topic is a bit wide. It's not like the first one, leadership. Corporate governance framework and structures. That's what we shall start next week.